Whoever paid for a full-page ad for just one small restaurant must have been a little unusual. Those ads cost a huge amount of money, and most people wouldn't even imagine taking one out. Dick York disappeared from Bewitched in 1969, and the studio told the public he was just exhausted. But the truth was kept hidden for decades. In 2003, old, unreleased footage finally came out, showing what had really happened on set: York collapsing, screaming in pain for nearly 20 minutes, and later signing a deal that prevented him from telling the real story. By the time he passed away in 1992, he had gone from being a Hollywood star to cleaning bathrooms just to survive. His wife found more than 200 hidden pills around their house. Today, his son is finally sharing what the cameras never allowed the world to see. Dick York was born on September 4, 1928, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. America was still hurting from the Great Depression. His father, Bernard, worked whatever small sales jobs he could find, while his mother, Betty, sewed clothing and eventually started a tiny beauty shop to help keep the lights on. Their household was full of struggle, but something unusual was happening inside it, something no one expected. At Dick's Catholic school, a nun noticed something special about him. It wasn't how he behaved, it was how he spoke. His voice was different, smooth, rich, and full of expression. She pulled him aside and encouraged him to develop it, to speak with confidence, and to see his voice as a gift. That small encouragement changed the entire direction of his life. When the family moved to Chicago around the time Dick was 10, they weren't looking for opportunity, they were simply trying to survive. But Chicago became the place that shaped him. The city was full of noise and energy, and almost every home had a radio playing in the kitchen. Dick sat beside them for hours, listening to every program closely. He didn't just hear the shows, he studied them. He copied the voices, practiced the timing, and absorbed the rhythm of radio acting until it became part of him. By age 15, he wasn't just another kid with a hobby. He became the lead voice on a national CBS radio show called That Brewster Boy. He had gone from copying actors in a tiny apartment to being the actor millions of people listened to. Two boys had played the role before him, but something clicked when Dick took over. His natural timing and tone made ordinary lines sound alive. The show ran for years and brought money into the York home at a time when they had often gone without enough food. But even while Dick was earning, the family still struggled. Bernard's work was never steady. Rent was always tight. Dick worked constantly because he knew what it felt like to almost lose everything. Later in life, even when he owned rental properties, he refused to evict anyone who couldn't pay. He remembered too well what fear looked like. During his youth, something else happened that he rarely talked about. Some say he had polio, others say it was another illness. Whatever it was, it weakened him. He recovered, but not fully. His body carried a fragility that remained hidden under his talent. This weakness showed itself years later on a movie set. In 1959, while filming They Came to Cordura with Gary Cooper, the two men were pushing a heavy handcar for a scene. On one of the takes, Cooper let go early, and Dick ended up carrying the weight alone. The muscles on the right side of his back tore badly. He later said that moment started years of chronic pain and dependence on painkillers. But the roots of his physical problems had been planted long before. There is some uncertainty about when his radio career actually began. Some say he started at 15, others say he was only 13. Either way, he was far too young to handle the pressure of performing for millions of people. But he did it, and he did it well. His salary kept his family afloat during years when they otherwise would have gone hungry. Then everything fell apart, not because of his talent, but because of politics. It was 1945, and fear of communism was spreading in America. The writers of That Brewster Boy, Pauline Hopkins and Owen Vincent, were accused of being sympathetic to communists because they had previously helped resistance groups fighting the Nazis. That was enough for suspicion. Dick was told to walk away from them, but he refused. He simply said, "I was with them." That loyalty cost him his role. The show was recast and rebranded, and Dick had to move on. He later joined Jack Armstrong, All-American Boy as Billy Fairfield, and stayed for 6 years. He also worked on many other radio shows, Grand Marquis, Meet the Meeks, My True Story, and many more. Over time, he created nearly 400 different character voices: old men, little boys, dreamers, tough guys, any voice the script needed. It was during one of these jobs that he met Joan Alt, a 17-year-old commercial reader. He was 23. Joan's parents strongly disapproved. They said he wasn't successful enough and even threatened to have him arrested if he didn't stay away from their daughter. But the two were deeply in love. One night, they drove to Rockford, Illinois at 2 in the morning and paid a justice of the peace $5 to marry them. Her father disowned her for a while, and her mother cried for days, but Dick stayed by her side through all of it. In 1950, Dick appeared on TV for the first time in Lights Out, a horror show on NBC. He performed an 8-minute monologue without a single break, filmed live. It was so intense that NBC received dozens of complaints from viewers who were disturbed by his performance. One woman said her husband couldn't sleep for a week. The network loved the reaction, though, and critics praised him. By 1952, he earned $750 per episode on the series Going My Way with Gene Kelly. But not everyone appreciated his humor. The show's Catholic advisors thought he joked too much and nearly had him fired, but Kelly defended him. Even so, York began to gain a reputation for not sticking to stiff scripts. He wasn't difficult, he just liked adding natural energy to his scenes. Some directors disliked the extra work this caused. In 1953, he starred in a pilot called The Marriage, but executives said he looked too young to play a husband. Worse, someone leaked his audition tape and passed it around Hollywood as an example of what not to do. Dick didn't know why he kept getting rejected until he overheard the truth. The embarrassment crushed him and left him unemployed for 6 months. Things changed in 1954 when he appeared on the Jack Benny program. 20 million people watched him play a hitchhiker. His ad-libs made people laugh so hard during rehearsals that Jack Benny became angry. When an actor gets more laughs than the star, it causes trouble. Benny cut York's role down to just a few minutes, and they never worked together again. But even with all these challenges, York kept getting roles. He beat out 200 actors, including a young Tony Curtis, to star in the film Someone Stole My Gal. He earned $15,000 for the movie, which was a huge amount for him. The film included several musical numbers and a long, romantic kiss with June Haver that took 14 takes to get right. A photographer caught them eating lunch together, and the tabloids turned it into a rumor. The gossip helped the movie, and box office sales went up. Dick suddenly had hundreds of fans writing letters to him every week. But Hollywood can be very harsh. A year later, while filming The Naked Street, a staged explosion went off too close to him. The timing was wrong, and real black powder blasted into his face. His eyebrows were burned off, his cheek was badly injured, and he needed 23 stitches. His co-star was knocked unconscious. That accident left him with new pain and new pills. Painkillers became a quiet part of his life. By the late 1950s, his rising popularity began to bother some powerful people. During the TV adaptation of Going My Way, Bing Crosby was worried that York might overshadow him. Crosby demanded many script changes. Dick lost several scenes, several songs, and even emotional moments because Crosby said they made him look weak. Lighting was adjusted to flatter Crosby and dull York, but reviewers still called York's acting magnetic. That didn't help his situation behind the scenes. Then came one of the most chaotic films of the decade, Operation Mad Ball in 1957. York played a soldier who organized a wild, nightclub-style party with real burlesque dancers, including Lily St. Cyr. The scene was only a few seconds long, but it caused an uproar. Some states banned the movie. The controversy hurt the studio, but strangely, it boosted York's reputation. Fans called him bold and exciting. But everything changed on July 23, 1959. They Came to Cordura was filming in Arizona during extreme heat, 118 degrees. York and Cooper were lifting a 400-pound handcar for a scene. They had to push it a short distance. On the third take, Cooper released his side early. York didn't let go in time. His back took the entire weight. Something inside him snapped with a loud crack. He collapsed instantly and screamed in agony. People thought he was exaggerating or had just pulled a muscle. They gave him aspirin and expected him to recover in a few minutes. But he couldn't stand. Hours passed before someone realized it was serious. He spent 97 days in the hospital, dealing with unbearable pain and huge medical bills. Doctors gave him morphine, Demerol, and experimental drugs. This was the moment when his dependence on painkillers truly began, and it never fully stopped. Despite all warnings, Dick York took on the film The Flying Fontaines in 1960. It was a circus drama full of aerial stunts, and he did them all, even with his injured spine, taking painkillers between takes. Audiences never saw his trembling hands or the slanted board he used backstage to lie flat. They only saw a committed trapeze artist, unaware that these performances marked the beginning of his decline. By 1961, York was filming Lover Comeback, a light romantic comedy with Doris Day and Rock Hudson. Behind the cheerful scenes, he was taking up to 20 Vicodin pills a day. During one kiss scene with Day, he nearly collapsed, though the studio kept it secret. His body was already shrinking from his original height of 6 feet 1 inch, his posture bent, his health deteriorating. Every day ended with more pills, and every scene became heavier than the last. In 1963, he appeared in The Wheeler Dealers, another comedy, which included a bar fight scene. He refused a stunt double, and when the scene went wrong, he screamed, not acting, but in real pain. The crew froze as a medic was called. His back was beyond repair, yet he kept going, still delivering charm on screen while his bones failed him. The year 1962 brought more struggles. On the film State Fair, rumors of an affair with 21-year-old Anne Margaret circulated. Photos were leaked, hotel rooms were mentioned, and fingers pointed. York had been married to Joan Alt since 1951, and the scandal nearly broke them. His heavy use of painkillers blurred the line between impulse and intention. Publicly, everything appeared normal, but privately, there was chaos. His image, once pristine, began to fracture. Later that year, he starred in The Hook, a Korean War drama about executing a prisoner. He played a soldier unable to pull the trigger. The role required deep vulnerability. He sought therapy during filming just to continue. It was his last leading film role, and both his career and his body were declining. Television, however, kept calling. Between 1957 and 1963, York appeared 7 times on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, excelling in crime, suspense, and mystery. One episode, The 12-Hour Caper, showcased him as a clever embezzler. Fans loved it, not knowing he had never actually met Hitchcock. His skill for suspense was remarkable, as was his ability to hide his pain. In 1960, he appeared on The Twilight Zone and The Purple Testament, playing a captain witnessing men dying in World War II. His performance struck viewers, but tragedy followed when his co-star and director died in a plane crash the same day the episode aired. Fiction and reality seemed to collide around him again. By 1961, while filming an episode of Route 66, his character's pain mirrored his own. He carried a flatboard in his trailer to lie on between takes. He worked through agony, real or scripted. In 1964, Dick York auditioned for the role of Darren Stevens in Bewitched. The producers required him to copy Elizabeth Montgomery's famous nose twitch. While others struggled, York nailed it perfectly. Producer William Asher cast him on the spot. But York admitted the truth, he had badly injured his back on the 1959 set of They Came to Cordura. Instead of replacing him, the studio adjusted the set, they installed a 15-degree leaning wall so he could rest, moved his dressing room to the ground floor, and designed a special chair for support. Everyone admired his honesty, but the injury never healed and worsened over time. By 1965, his mornings began with 15 strong pills, including Percodan, Demerol, and new muscle relaxants not yet approved by the FDA. Every line he delivered came through a haze of painkillers. Directors often spent hours editing slurred lines, but nothing could fully hide what was happening on camera. During one scene, his legs gave out, and he collapsed into a bookshelf while still reciting his lines. The footage was shocking, and studio executives feared it would leak. The official story remained exhaustion, and the real footage stayed locked away until 2003. Behind the scenes, Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, quietly helped him. She had prescription bottles in her costumes and props, sometimes passing them to him as part of a scene. She later said she felt guilty because her own son had died in the war, and helping Dick became a way to care for someone again. She recorded every pill, every mood swing, and every fall in a hidden diary, which only surfaced years later. In 1967, everything finally broke. During the episode Samantha's Good News, a gag required York to fall on a hardwood floor after slipping on a banana peel. His spine couldn't handle it, but pressure from production left him no choice. When he did the stunt, his sciatic nerves screamed, and he cried out in pain for 20 minutes. The crew carried him off set. For subsequent episodes, his character was written as being away on business, forcing Samantha to invent increasingly ridiculous magical excuses. Fans noticed and began questioning his absence. In 1968, during the episode Samantha's French Pastry, York had pneumonia with a temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The scene required him to climb scaffolding and hold pies for a slapstick scene. Despite the danger, he insisted on performing. Halfway up, he blacked out and fell into the pies. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Hospital for 6 days. When producer William Asher visited, York whispered, "Bill, I can't fake it anymore. The magic is gone." That marked the end of his work on Bewitched. There was no farewell, and a confidentiality agreement barred him from speaking about his addiction for 10 years. The pie scene was res-hot with a double, and his final episode aired quietly on March 25, 1968. He left the show in March 1969, hoping for a fresh start. Back in Chicago, York attempted a stage comeback with Inherit the Wind. On opening night, while delivering key lines, his spine collapsed. The audience initially thought it was part of the performance, but he began crawling across the floor. The curtain dropped in confusion, and the show's 20-night run ended immediately. York suffered $50,000 in damages and never returned to the stage. By 1970, he was taking 40 pills a day just to survive. That spring, he checked into rehab under the guise of a Palm Springs vacation, but addiction quickly drew him back. In 1971, CBS offered him a role in the pilot of MASH. He arrived slurring and disoriented and was fired after 2 hours. His agent dropped him after discovering he had written bad checks to buy pills. He lost Hollywood completely. Later, he did a voiceover for a painkiller commercial, but his performance was incoherent, and the deal fell through, leaving him $5,000 in debt. By 1972, Joan had discovered over 200 Demerol pills hidden throughout their home. She left with the children. Dick moved into a $40 a week motel and took a mail delivery job earning $96 per week. He returned to therapy with an addiction specialist, and Joan eventually returned. By 1975, his smoking and pill use had severely damaged his lungs. At 46, doctors warned he had 6 months to live unless he stopped acting, smoking, and everything else. They sold their Hollywood Hills home for half its value to pay $78,000 in medical bills. They bought a modest apartment building with the remaining money, but he refused to evict tenants who fell behind, losing it as well. By 1976, the family was on welfare. By 1986, they lived in a small bungalow in Michigan. The man who once earned 6 figures was now cleaning toilets to survive. His $650 pension barely covered food. His health was failing, his body frail, and his appearance had changed so much that he barely resembled the charming Darren Stevens of television fame. Despite this, York found purpose. In 1988, from his recliner and tethered to oxygen tanks, he launched a charity called Acting for Life. He called radio stations, warehouses, and government offices, collecting military surplus, mattresses, sleeping bags, and clothing for shelters. That year alone, he helped feed thousands of people, even as his own family struggled financially. In 1990, a Bewitched reunion was in the works, but York's health and insurance restrictions prevented him from participating. He was offered $10,000 for a cameo on a different show but turned it down due to his condition. By 1991, his daughter Mandy fell into depression watching her father's health decline. The family sold York's Emmy-nominated radio tapes from his early career for $2,000 to survive, living solely on his $650 pension. In 1992, experimental treatments for his emphysema were offered, but he refused, wanting to save money for his children's education. On February 20, 1992, Dick York died at Blodgett Memorial Hospital at age 63. He left behind 5 children, a devoted wife, and unpaid debts. His funeral was small and quiet, held in Rockford, Illinois, and he was buried without grandeur in Plainfield Township Cemetery. Though Bewitched reruns continued to play across the country, generating millions of dollars, York's family received none. His posthumous memoir, The Seesaw Girl and Me, revealed how he had been excluded from the profits. His son, Chris, now guards his legacy, sharing stories of a man who endured unbearable pain yet gave everything he could to help others. Today, fans discovering Bewitched for the first time celebrate Dick York not as a fallen star, but as a man of extraordinary courage and generosity.